when we think about they're my family, therefore I've just got to make space for everything that they are, including the difficulty that they bring to my life. The most freeing thing that I've learned is that part of my values is that I can love you, but I can also love you from over there.
Hello, I'm Brahe-Daddo. Welcome to Separate Bathrooms. We would like to acknowledge the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay our respects to the elders both past and present. This is my husband, Cameron Daddo.
G'day.
Hi, honey.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm really good.
You feeling good today?
Yeah.
You excited about this chat we've got coming up?
Oh, look, excited, yes. But just sort of, I just love this lady so much. She's been so kind to me, behind the scenes, meeting up. She's been a supporter of me for many a year, helped me with my book.
Right.
She was my go-to person when I was struggling with all of that. So she's just kindness embodied.
Oh, well, we're talking about Dr. Rebecca Ray. She's with us again. Beck, as she likes to be called, is a clinical psychologist. She's an author. She's written a few books and she's a speaker. And her latest book is called Difficult People.
Mm-hmm. She's supported and helped so many people, I'm one of them, with her kindness, her humour and her wisdom to live bigger and better lives.
Yeah, so we thought as we approach the silly season, also known as the festive season, our holiday time, when we're often tested and taken to our emotional limits, let's just say that, by having to spend time with people who we might find a little difficult.
Well, don't fear. We've got some tips for you. Our Beck is here to save our souls and from falling in a heap or running screaming from the family Christmas party. So please welcome Rebecca Ray.
How about this? Is it the air freshener? Is it the clean towels? Is it the I don't give a crap toilet paper that brings you back into the bathroom? Gosh, it's good to have you here.
It's just you two. It's not any of the perks. It's simply the humans.
It is. And to have you actually in our bathroom is just the delight. It's just a delight. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah.
It's a pinnacle for me. I've always wanted to be in your bathroom.
I don't think have you actually been in person, or have we always done it over the intraweb?
We've done it over the interweb. I think the first time we did it was COVID times. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
I know. I was going to say we get to call her friend of the show, Rebecca Ray.
You sound a bit like Sandra Sully then.
I'm adding that
like
to my
that.
bio in that voice.
I like
That's
that.
what you got to do when you introduce yourself. Friend of the show to Separate Bathrooms. Absolutely. I love it.
That's like a newsreader voice.
Yeah.
I
That's
love it.
Yeah. My very weird newsreader voice.
Yeah. So,
All right.
go.
Oh, we're just
We're
going to jump
talk
in.
about the book.
We're just
going
to jump in because we are coming up to the silly season, and you have written this fabulous book. It's only your 9th book, correct?
It's my 6th.
Oh, you saw 9 upside down.
I thought that
6
was more,
upside
'cause
down
I was
rather.
looking in I was counting how many books there were with your name.
I have
to
done
it.
3 for Audible, so maybe you were counting the
that's
3.
what it was.
Yeah. It's
So
my
you
6th in physical book, yeah.
But you still have written. Have you still written 9?
Well,
Or-
if you count what I've written for Audible, then yes, I guess I have.
let's just say 9.
Okay.
9, as in German no.
Anyway, it's
or
a lot of
9.
books. It's a lot of books.
Yeah, it's a lot
and
of
you're
writing.
a genius. So your latest one, Difficult People, is the one we want to get into because, as I was saying, we are coming up to the silly season where we have to deal with a lot of difficult people often. Do you want to ask the first question, hon?
Well, I'm just going to say, do you have a definition for difficult person?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I really love that question because I think it's so incredibly important. I think this was the thing that really spun me for I was going to use a mix of metaphors there. Let me correct that.
You can mix your metaphors, that's fine. I do all the time.
It threw me for a 6, is what I wanted to say.
Okay. As opposed to a 9?
As opposed to 9. What happened with this book was I had to walk this line between writing about dangerous people, which I consider to be crossing a line criminally, especially when we're talking about physical and sexual violence.
Yep.
And then winding it back to difficult people who are far more recognisable but whose behaviours are far more subtle. So these are the people in our lives who give us the ick factor.
Oh, okay.
They're the ones where you walk away thinking, was that me? Did I do something wrong? Because this doesn't feel right. Generally, they're the ones that make you second guess yourself. They're the ones that make you doubt yourself and doubt your sense of reality and whether or not your narrative of what's happening between the two of you is correct.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that often walk away and leave you thinking, I can't put words to what just happened, but it didn't feel good.
So, speaking, asking for a friend, people pleasers. Do people pleasers, are they more vulnerable to difficult people in the sense of having that experience? Because I find I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm forever going, did I say something? Was that me? Like, I must have done, that could have, what did I do to make
but
them...
is that more your issue or is it more
that's what I'm saying. That I think is my issue as a dyed-in-the-wool people pleaser, insecure person.
Yeah, but you're in rehab.
I am in rehab.
You're quite a long way into rehab for that.
But my friend Rebecca Rae, she once told me about people pleasers, and you actually complimented them. You said, "I remember you gave me a different take on people pleasers, and it actually really helped me."
Yeah.
Do you remember what you said to me?
I do.
Yeah.
I was telling you that people pleasers are actually incredibly good in relationships in terms of strengthening the connection because usually they're just vastly adept at being able to read other people's needs. They get really skilled at being able to identify how someone's feeling and what they need to be able to not fix their feelings, but to at least meet their feelings. And so I think people pleasing can actually be a relational strength when it's used not at the cost of the people pleaser.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
not
think,
at the cost.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
I love that.
when we're talking about you, if I can use my prior knowledge to today, sure, you might be in rehab for people pleasing, but we also can't turn off the parts of your personality that encourage you to people please.
Yeah.
You're what is colloquially known today as an empath. You feel things very deeply. You're a sensitive person. Now, if we turn that off, you wouldn't be the stellar creator that you are. You wouldn't. Because you just
wouldn't
wouldn't
be me.
No,
Yeah,
you wouldn't be you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be the mother that you are, the wife that you are. You wouldn't be the friend that you are. It's part of the fabric of who you are. We don't want to turn that off, but we also want to make sure that the behaviours that make you so wonderful in relationships are not costing you your own needs.
Yes. Yeah.
So what
perfectly.
happens in answer to your first question, which is, as a people pleaser, am I more vulnerable to difficult people? In a sense, yes, you are if you lack the awareness of the behaviour that you're doing because you're easier to manipulate.
Yeah, right.
So what happens is difficult people destabilise us.
Yeah.
They make us feel not so great in our own skin. And a people pleaser's natural reaction to that is to fix. I'm going to turn myself inside out and upside down so I become what you need me to be. Now, that's fine if... Let's say you're just in a conflicted situation and you just need to sort the conflict out and then you can move on.
Yep.
But if this is a long-term pattern with, say, a best friend that just consistently takes more from you than you have to give, or a boss that consistently asks more of you than you're being paid for, etc., then it means that you're going to end up in a place that I call resentmentville, which is the
That
place...
doesn't sound a very happy place to
It's
be.
not a great place, Cam. I
wanna
don't
visit
recommend
there.
it. No, don't go there on your next trip.
Okay.
Sometimes we can end up there, and I don't mind you visiting temporarily because what that shows you is someone's crossed my boundary, or I've just discovered a boundary I didn't know I had and I need to rectify it. But what happens for people pleasers is so often they don't feel secure enough to be able to speak up for themselves, so they don't. And that's great for a while because people pleasers often do quiet compliance. So they're sitting in a place where they're like, this is all fine, it'll be fine. They'll stop doing this eventually and I won't need to make a big thing out of it.
So it's good at a cocktail party, but not...
It's great. It's not great in the long-term
right.
relationship,
Gotcha.
whatever the shape that takes.
Gotcha.
And eventually what will happen is the people pleaser unfortunately ends up like a simmering volcano and there will be an eruption.
I can just see that emoji of that exploding head.
Yeah,
That's
going.
it. Yeah.
absolutely.
What?
Oh, well, we were talking this morning about how difficult people can, like, why do they drain your energy? Like, why? Like, I feel like that's a red flag when you've been with someone and you feel completely drained. Why is that part of the difficult people red flags?
Yeah, it is. I think one of the things that I just want to make a distinction. We're both introverts. Elle and I are both introverts. Cam, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
Somewhere in the middle.
So ambivert?
I have
okay.
I have extroverted moments, and I
Yes.
know that I do like my time as an introvert and alone.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I vacillate between the two.
Okay. So
greatly.
you'd be an ambivert. You can do both.
Okay. I'm an ambivert.
You're an
I do use
ambivert.
my right hand and my left hand.
Ambidextrous, that one.
And
would
I
be.
do kick with both feet.
There you go.
Look,
You're
you're
an
a man of-
ambidextrous ambivert.
Many talents. Many talents.
Just go with the flow, Beck. Go with the flow.
Look, I love it. Musician / actor / all the other things.
Why not? Necessity is the root of all that sort of stuff. Do what you can when
Exactly.
you can.
Exactly.
Yes, I'll do it.
We're available. So we're both introverts, Ali, and we need to be aware of how our batteries are drained by peopling. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person is bad. It just means that socializing and using our social energy drains our batteries. We get restored by being alone and being quiet. That's very different to the type of drained energy that you're talking about.
Yes.
The type of drained energy from difficult people has a toxic flavour to it. So rather than just us walking away from today and thinking that was so much fun, but also I'd like to read a book now.
Yep.
You walk away from a difficult person and feel ick. It just doesn't feel right. So the energy draining that you're experiencing comes with this extra complexity where you can end up overthinking and end up thinking that you've done something wrong, etc., etc.
Yes. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes I feel like I need a shower after being around people.
That's it. The first word I was going to say was it can sometimes come with a dirty energy.
Yes.
But I don't necessarily mean dirty in the way it could be interpreted. I just mean that it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, exactly.
So festive season, it's upon us. So it brings expectations that we have to fulfill or these perceived obligations that we've got to do, or the in-laws are coming, or this is, my whatever's going on. All the shoulds, right? How can we balance those shoulds and obligations and things with our own needs in the next, and boundaries as well, I guess?
Yeah.
How do we balance that out on Christmas Day?
Or even just over the next few months, because I think often the Christmas season it extends out over weeks, and because often there's anticipatory anxiety. Now, anticipatory anxiety, especially if you're about to enter into a seasonal situation with a difficult person, is where you're thinking long before you even get there about what it's going to be like to be around this person and what they're going to demand of you. Yeah. So that occurs long before you actually arrive on Christmas Day. But I think the first thing that you do need to think about is your needs from the perspective of looking after your own needs is not selfish. Unfortunately, it gets a really bad rap for some reason.
Taking care of your own needs? Taking
care of your own needs is, I think, especially for women and for femme-identifying people, oftentimes looking after your own needs is actually seen as
selfish,
unkind, mean, selfish, a little bit diva-ish. And what that stops us from doing is being able to identify when we have the energy to actually be able to give to other people.
Yeah.
So what happens is we end up saying yes when our giving tanks are empty and possibly almost rusting during this season because there are so many things demanded of us over and over again.
Yeah.
So you end up getting into situations that you don't want to be in. You wish you had have said no to. So I want to give our listeners first and foremost permission to be able to say no now to make their future selves happy. It's okay to say no.
For me, what I've learnt with that too is that I can say I can pop in for an hour. Do you know what I mean? Like rather than I can't make the entire dinner, but I'd love to just pop in for a drink and then I'm gone. So I feel like I've shown up, I've made the appearance.
Yep.
But I've taken care of my needs as well.
Yeah.
Because they're okay, look, I understand family have flown in from everywhere or whatever. I do need to say hi, but I can give myself the time that I feel is nurturing for me, which is just that hour, and then dip out. They're happy they've seen me. I'm happy I've been there, and now I'm going home to my book and my dogs. So yeah, I feel like finding that balance is
Not to
really
you, Cam,
important.
but to a book and our dogs.
No, Cam's still at the party.
Cam's still extroverting.
Right.
Or he's back home with the dogs in the doghouse.
Yeah. Can we just talk to, you just said, I do need to go. Can we just talk to that particular sentence?
Yeah.
Because what's behind that is your values. And so sometimes we really do feel obligated because it's consistent with who we want to be, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Sometimes we have to do hard things that we'd probably rather not do.
Yeah.
But it makes us align with who we want to be at the end of the day, so we go ahead and do it. And that's exactly the way that you can do it, is by first assessing, well, what do I have to give for this? I've got an hour's worth in me. I can go and do that. Makes everyone else happy. I feel good because I actually did the thing, and then I can go and return to home.
Yep.
So that's absolutely fine. I think where people run into problems is where they interpret other people's shoulds that have been projected onto them as things they must meet.
That's the expectations.
Exactly.
Perceived expectations.
Yeah.
Can we just swing back
Sure.
to that moment that you said, that pre-holiday stuff, that anxiety you had
And anticipatory anxiety.
yeah, what a swipe that was. There's a big label on there. Anticipatory anxiety.
Yeah.
What can our listener do about that? Because to me, that's about projecting into the future that hasn't happened.
Exactly. That's what anxiety is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, so how do we stay present? What do we say? What do we say to ourselves in that moment? Oh my God, my sister-in-law's coming.
Yeah.
She hates me. She doesn't want to be with me. Or doesn't want to talk to me at all. And that's happening in 6 weeks' time, and I'm already tight about that.
I think the first thing that we need to do is acknowledge the feeling. Nothing will come from you just waking up with that anxiety and going, well, I'll just think positive about it. No, that actually makes me feel sick to say that out loud because it's so invalidating. And we end up in this toxic positivity kind of genre where it makes other people feel comfortable if you just get over your difficult feelings. Anxiety doesn't work like that. The more you try to get rid of anxiety, the more intense the anxiety will become.
Yeah.
Because the anxiety is there for a reason. So first, I think we need to acknowledge the feeling. I'm feeling anxious, or I'm noticing anxiety. That sentence is really good because it helps you to separate out from being anxiety.
Right.
I'm anxious is different to I'm noticing I'm feeling anxious.
Yep.
And then acknowledge that this person has probably made you feel like this for a reason. You know, they're probably hard work. And that might not be about you. That might be about them and the way they are. So the anticipatory anxiety is not necessarily something just to deal with and package away. It's something to respect and then to use as a planning device. Okay, this person is difficult for me.
Yeah.
What can I do and set up in the Christmas situation or the seasonal events that are happening in the lead up to this to help me manage in that situation more effectively? And that might be grounding techniques that you can use for yourself and within yourself that nobody else needs to know about, like breathing. Super common. You'll read it in every single self-help book, and yet it's the one that is the quickest way to calm the nervous system down because it goes straight to the limbic system and it undoes the work of the fight-flight response. So if your fight-flight response is going gangbusters, the alarms are going off, and you slow your breathing down, your brain goes, what? I thought we were panicking. But it doesn't seem like we are.
Yeah.
And so you only need to do, a couple of minutes of slow breathing to have it quite a big effect. So yes, you can do that. That's one of your options. But you can also plan for things like having a safe person with you.
Right. Someone
that can help you manage your response in the situation, and someone that can also remind you that you've got permission to leave if you need to or go to the bathroom. And it can also help you plan what you're going to do if this person does what they always do. Now, that could be they drink.
That can be what?
They drink.
Oh, okay.
They bring up politics. They start questioning you for your tattoos. Whatever it is that they're always going to do. Yeah. The anticipatory anxiety can be a marker to get you to plan for that.
Have you been hanging around at our Christmases?
Well, am I invited this year or what?
Bloody hell.
Oh, I love it.
But this is what happens with difficult people. Difficult people are predictable.
Which is helpful in one way because then
because you know it's coming.
Then you know it's coming, and it's so true. Like that often our exhaustative sort of, I don't even know if that's a word.
It is now.
Often our conversations around challenging people for you and I is we end up going, but they're never going to change. When they're never going to change. They've been this way this whole time. So it's sort of more about how are we going to respond rather than because we're not going to change that person because that's so predictive of what they are and what they're going to say.
Yeah, and it's also hard when you hit someone who is predictable in how they go about things, how they acknowledge you and will surmise a situation that you're in and you end up feeling, like you said, icky or dirty or whatever afterwards, going, it just feels like crap. And then the next time, 8 out of 10 times you see them, two of those times, they're actually really nice. And that unsettles you sort of like into this false sense of, oh, they actually do give a shit about me and they do acknowledge what's going on. But then the hard part is 8 times out of 10, the next time they go and pull the rug out from underneath you.
Yeah. My question to that is, but do they really care about you? I think we're talking about different types of difficult people.
Yeah, I guess so.
In the book, I talk about so many different types of difficult behaviours, and one of them is I'm going to charm you as long as I'm getting benefit from you. I'm going to be nice to you because you're doing what I want you to do right now. Yeah. But the other 8 times, you're really annoying me and I've got no use for you, so off you go.
I'm feeling icky as you say this.
Yes, yes. So it does depend on what the difficult person is like. But what I can probably guarantee is that you'll know what they're like because you've experienced it before.
Right.
And whether or not you can put words to it, you don't really need to be able to put words to it. All you know is that you've seen this from them before.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right, Elle. One of my struggles with writing the book was... Well, I actually said to my publisher, this won't be a book about how to change the difficult person. She's gone, but surely you've got some tips. And I'm like, well, no, because what we know as psychologists is the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour. And so I'm not saying that these people are impossible to change. I'm just saying that largely difficult people really struggle with what psychologists call psychological mindedness, which is essentially the capacity to be able to think about our behaviour, reflect on that behaviour, and then make changes to grow. Difficult people don't really want to grow because the way they are is really working out for them.
Yes. Why do I need to change?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, but we do need to change the way we respond to them.
That's right.
That's the issue, isn't it? We get to choose how we respond. That's where we retain our
power. And sometimes that
Yes.
response might be not seeing them at all. Like
well, that's it.
Yeah.
You walk out. T.O. bye, and you're done. Ali had a great question, which you should ask. Because it was as we were preparing today's conversation, I didn't understand one of the things that
this is what I was going to ask that same question. Ask the question because I wanted to precursor this with I love my parents-in-law. So this is not a personal question. That said. What if...
This is such treacherous ground, isn't it?
No, but that is the truth. I love your mum and dad. So you've got the difficult person is your mother-in-law. And But your husband, wife, whoever, does not think that their parent is difficult at all. They love her. What do you do? Because in knowing that she's difficult for you, but they've got these family events, it's going to cause tension in your relationship. How do you navigate that situation?
So there's a few assumptions I have to make for this example. And one is that the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law is not being the difficult person. Because sometimes difficult people can decide that other people are difficult. It's not me. Yes. I don't have a problem. It's my in-laws. They're the problem. So our first assumption is, look, you're not the difficult person. Your mother-in-law really is difficult. If you want your relationship to continue, if your partner can't see that their parent is having an impact on you that is harmful in some way, that's your first problem. Okay. It's not the mother-in-law that's the first problem. It's the disconnect between their child not having the insight to go, the way my mother is behaving towards you is inappropriate and unacceptable. So that's where we have to start, because when you're dealing with any extended family members, and we're assuming that those relationships are long-term, right?
We hope so.
Yes, there's going to be some contact, or even frequent contact if you get along well enough with them. It's you and your partner against the rest of the world. You've got to be on the same team here. And what happens sometimes with family dynamics is they can get these rose-coloured glasses where, no, my family doesn't do anything wrong. So goodness gracious, no, I won't hear of it. But that then drives a wedge between the two of you. Yeah. So we must start with the relationship to begin with. Now, if your mother-in-law really is difficult, that conversation has to happen first between you and your partner. And then secondly, you need to determine how you're going to manage it together. Because if your partner's not on board with helping you manage it, then you're against the two of them.
That's right. You're on your own.
Yes. And we've got what's called triangulation, where two people end up in competition with the other end of the triangle, and that's unfair. So in terms of that, once you're on the same team and you have an understanding of the impact that this person is having on you, then there needs to be a decision around how you're going to manage the mother-in-law, if that's who we're talking about. Yeah. And that brings us around to what you were saying before, Cam, about our power lies in how we respond. If we continue expecting the other person to change, then we're giving away our power to someone else. It's a really vulnerable place to be. And so many people stay there for years, if not decades, hoping that that person will change so that their life becomes easier. It's so incredibly sad.
Is there a sign, or is there a time when you feel it would be a good thing to, I don't even want to say confront the difficult person with their behaviour, but to talk to them about that? Because maybe there is something that they don't recognise within themselves that is really annoying or really damaging. How do we know when to approach that difficult person, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
And how do you begin to, what's a sentence that you can say?
I need some
scripting.
I get asked them in every interview.
Well, because we don't have the words for it. And you're
know.
How do we even start this?
Well, the problem is that my answer to that is always it depends, because it depends on you, it depends on the person, it depends on your dynamic together and the language you'd ordinarily use. Yeah. So the way you speak to each other would be very different to the way you speak to the bosses here at Nova. It's a completely different language that you would use. So I can't just give you step 1, 2 and 3 with words.
Fair enough.
But what I can say is that it's appropriate to confront a difficult person with their behaviour when the stakes are high enough. So let me give you an example. I'm raised by difficult people in and of themselves because they don't have emotional skills that I've been trained to have. I'm educated. I've grown up in a different generation. I have different ways of communicating. I have a 5-year-old, as you both know. When Bennett was younger, I was in a position where my dad yelled at him over something.
Okay.
Now, we don't really yell. We don't raise our voices in our house, just a choice. It feels more comfortable for us. And the yelling involved a line along the lines of, stop crying, don't be a sook. No, that's not happening on my watch. So even though what happened with my dad, his tone, the sentence triggered everything inside me and made me hear my entire childhood in that millisecond. So my fight-flight response was immediately activated, and my first instinct was to freeze and shut down. The stakes are high. I will not have that happen to my child. So I was able to step in and say, no, we're not speaking to him like that, and remove him from the situation.
Now, your dad or...
No, I said that to my dad. I didn't remove Dad. I removed Bennett.
remove Dad from the situation and put him in the doghouse.
I would have liked to. Yes. But it's not always that easy, right? I was also at his house, so that was a bit harder to do.
Right.
So you grabbed Bennett.
I grabbed Bennett. I did not raise my voice, but I also did it very smoothly so that the conflict didn't ensue. So I simply just held Bennett's hand. We went outside to feed the ducks. So I wasn't making a thing out of it, even though Dad would have known that I was not happy, but there was no ongoing discussion because I know he's not going to change.
Right.
Now, there's a difference when you've seen the difficult person have insight at times. So if you've seen the difficult person want to grow, if you've seen them acknowledge things about their behaviour before that's been ineffective, it's almost an open door.
Yeah.
It could be safe enough for both of you to be able to have a conversation about them being more effective. But it does require the difficult person being courageous enough to get vulnerable, to acknowledge that their behaviour is problematic. Yeah. And many difficult people don't have the skills or willingness to be able to do that.
So if your dad had have come out and said, I'm so sorry, I know yelling must have sounded really terrible to Bennett and I apologise, then that's the open door.
Then I would have fallen off my chair, gone, what? Are you on drugs?
Who are you?
Yes.
What have you done with my dad?
That's right. I knew I was adopted. No, if he was to say that, I would receive it. Like I would. I think I'm a big believer in receiving what someone's capable to give you. Yeah. And sometimes that's not always the words that we want to hear. Sometimes that's love in a different language than we would prefer. So I would give chances, but I don't always even get close to that. Yeah. So sometimes we need to think, what is the difficult person capable of? What are my values here? What do I want the relationship to look like moving forward? And do I need to take back my power in order to protect myself and the people I love? So in that case, we have options. And the options, especially for the silly season, is that sometimes changing the form of contact is not only permissible, you are allowed to do it. It makes things so much more effective. Yeah. So instead of having face-to-face catch-up, it might be a Zoom call. Instead of a Zoom call, it might be FaceTime. Instead of FaceTime, we might just go to a phone call. If talking is too much, we might just go to a text message or a seasonal card. So you're actually in a position where you can say, you know how we go back to when you said, I need to do this. Yeah. It's part of my values. I need to have some kind of contact. But how can I have that contact in a format in the way that protects my psychological safety?
Yes, yes. And what about if you know, again, I'm going to just use the example that you gave of your dad.
Yeah.
You know, say your dad was raised in a very abusive household where he was yelled at constantly. And so that's the way he knows how to communicate. Me as a daughter, do I, in that situation, do I give that a whole pass because I know the history? Does it make it any less challenging, or should I be more empathetic in that sense because I know the history of that person? Or it's just a boundary's a boundary and that's it?
You're so beautiful. I love you so much. And I love that your default is always compassion. In the book, I do talk about compassion a lot because I think compassion for other people can not only make our experience easier, but it can also depersonalize our experience. So what I mean by that is so often, especially for people that are sensitive, they go, this is my fault. I made this person difficult. And if only I changed like they tell me to, then they wouldn't be so difficult. If I was difficult, then if I wasn't difficult, then he'd stop yelling at me.
Right.
But the problem is, so compassion's not a bad thing. It helps you understand their experience, but we must have boundaries around what's acceptable for ourselves. Yelling is not safe for me. It's just not. It activates my fight-flight response.
Yeah.
I have a history of complex trauma. I manage the residual scars of that on a daily basis. I refuse to be in an environment, now that I'm an adult, I'm 44, I don't need to be in an environment now where I get yelled at. Yeah. So if that happens and there's alcohol involved or there's some other trigger, and often the trigger is there's a small person in the environment who's just being a small person, and that can be difficult to deal with for people that haven't been around a small person for a long time.
Especially if you're on an aeroplane travelling somewhere for 12 hours.
Absolutely.
And that small person's there triggering a whole lot of people in first class.
Exactly,
or business
right.
class.
So you know the look, right? It's,
yeah.
But it's more than side-eye when you're at your parents' place. So in that case, my boundaries are no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow that to happen. You don't get a hall pass, even though I'm actually not sure what happened in his childhood. But when I think about my grandparents, I think, God, surely there must be something. I always think, our upbringings shape us so much, but I just don't know.
Yeah.
But even so, let's say there was something. Fine. Acknowledge it and take responsibility for it, please.
Yes.
Because you're an adult.
Yeah.
The problem is that many difficult people, even when they know better, choose not to do better because it's harder. It's easier to do what we've always done. It's much harder to choose to change that behaviour, especially if it makes you feel vulnerable.
Yeah. And I think any time that there's a small one involved, there isn't any excuse big enough that makes it okay.
Kid.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
It doesn't matter. It's like, it's a child. I'm out. It's done.
Right.
It's over.
And
You've hurt my kid.
Yeah.
Done.
And you did the right thing by picking Bennett up and taking him out of the hot zone.
Bennett just doesn't even realise what's happened. He's got this resilience and confidence about him that even wasn't a thing for him.
Yeah.
But it is for me.
Yes.
And so I'm willing to take whatever heat happens in order to make sure that there's harm minimisation for Bennett, that it doesn't escalate.
Yeah. What questions do you ask yourself to go, wow, maybe I need to do a little bit of work on myself here in this prickly moment at the party or pre-Christmas during this festive season?
Yeah, so you would like a statement to be able to say to them to increase their ability to reflect on their behaviour.
Yeah.
No, there isn't one. Because if this person is being a truly difficult person and in that moment you think that there's something that you can say to flip their script in terms of what they're running, it's just very unlikely. And in fact, you're probably going to escalate the situation or make them defensive.
Yeah.
So instead, because usually when someone's being difficult, we're talking about raised limbic systems, raised nervous systems, people who are not feeling comfortable around each other. And that's often not the time to kind of say, you should look in the mirror, mate. I mean, you can always say something like that and walk away. You can say anything you want.
It's kind of dropping a smoke bomb though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or a bit of a bomb.
Well, I guess.
And walking away.
I guess what I'm more interested in is what you expect to happen after that.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good thought.
You can say whatever you think is going to be effective, but whether or not the difficult person takes that on board and then therefore goes and make changes, that's what you can't rely on. And this is why I think, the frustrating thing is you can communicate that question that I always get asked, how do I say it? You can communicate. You can be the Dalai Lama. And you can communicate in the most beautiful way possible, and a difficult person will interpret what you're saying through the lens that they want to interpret it. It won't make any difference.
Yeah, right.
So I'd more want you to focus on your expectations. And the same for our listeners during the Christmas season, the festive season, whatever you're celebrating, to be able to go, okay, what are my expectations here? What have I seen happen before? And how can I make sure that I'm protected? And then I want you to remember something really, really important. And that's that as an adult in this world, you have permission to not allow another adult access to you if that adult is unsafe for you.
Yeah.
And that includes them being unsafe in a way that you can't put words to.
That
So
just
good.
you saying that though, I have to say that just feels like someone just threw over the best kind of security blanket that I could ever have. It's such a simple comment, but it's sort of, yeah, why would I stay in a situation? I'm 53. Why would I stay in a situation or stay in the presence of someone that I don't feel safe with? And I think as women, we're really taught to override that emotion constantly.
Yeah.
Though to give ourselves not just permission, but to give ourselves the self-care to go, I just don't feel good around this person, and to follow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to make a scene or whatever.
Absolutely.
But
I mean,
just-
obviously we're talking about psychological safety here.
Yes,
not
absolutely.
physical safety or
Yeah.
sexual safety. That's dangerous, people.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we're talking about someone who just makes you feel that icky feeling.
Yeah, that just talks down to
Yeah,
you or
absolutely.
just brings up stuff that's not kind
Yeah.
or racist or whatever it is that you just want to
Questions
be
your
like,
gender, whatever
Yeah,
it is that
yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
You have permission to step away from that.
Yeah.
And to actually not allow that person access until they can be safe for you.
Yeah. Were you ever, did you, when you were titling, running through titles for the book, think about calling it Dickhead People instead of Difficult People?
I wanted the tagline to be just tell them to get fucked. But my publisher wasn't on board.
Yeah, I can see why. Yeah, I guess tell
I
them
like that
there's a
byline.
little bit. Just tell them.
Yeah,
It
just tell them.
Didn't like that bit.
Yeah,
the
just-
get F was
yeah.
probably okay, but
Yeah.
no.
Did you why this book? Why did you write this book?
I wrote this book because I was told to.
By who? Are you getting channeling from a higher power?
Oh, I do like to imagine that sometimes when I'm writing, but
Yeah.
one of the things that happened with setting boundaries, so that was the first book that we talked about, was I had such a beautiful reception to that book, and I got so many messages from people saying, thank you so much for writing it. It's really changed my life, which is so humbling. But I got the question that followed that enough that I thought I needed to answer it. And it's, I know what my boundaries are now, and I feel confident to set them, but they're just not working with this one person.
Yeah.
So what do I do with that one person? I was thinking, oh, that's a whole book in itself. And my publisher actually wanted me to write a book on narcissism. And I said, no, I'm not writing a book on personality disorders because they
Yeah.
already exist.
Yeah.
And what she was trying to say and eventually got out was, but what about that like everyday narcissist that's in all of our lives? And I was like, yeah, okay, there's a subtle area here
Yeah.
that's probably not covered. And I wanted to cover the subtlety.
Yeah, because we come across people like that all the time. Like we don't often come across those extreme cases.
Yeah.
I mean, some people might, but but to have that subtleness where it's just, as you say, just that I don't really like being around that person.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to spend time with that guy.
Are there tools around to I guess eventually like that prickly difficult person or even love them?
I actually think loving someone's easier than liking them a lot of the time.
Ooh,
especially
let's
if
go
you,
deeper into that. What do you mean?
well, especially if you share blood with them. I love my parents
Yeah.
dearly. I don't always like them.
Yeah.
Because their behaviour is difficult for me.
Okay.
Not all the time, just enough times that I would tell stories about them in podcasts.
So they know. This is not going to be a surprise.
If they listen to my work, they know. Hi, Mum and Dad. I think the thing is that we need to take responsibility for how we give out our loving energy. And oftentimes, especially as women, we are conditioned to give that out to whoever asks for it.
That's right.
Especially if the person is family. And I don't believe that that's a right that family members have. I think love is an ongoing earning of someone's trust and respect and care. And that includes to repair if the relationship has been damaged. Now, if you spend enough time with someone, the relationship will be damaged. Every single relationship is. There are relationship wounds as we grow together. And the challenge in partnerships is that we evolve in the same direction. The challenge with families is that you raise children that will go out into the world and develop their own value systems. And sometimes those value systems are very different to the parents. politically, I'm very different to my parents. And so when we think about, this kind of, they're my family, therefore I've just got to make space for everything that they are, including the difficulty that they bring to my life. The most freeing thing that I've learned is that part of my values is that I can love you, but I can also love you from over there.
Yeah, right. I love that. I think that's great because there's that expectation, because I'm your brother or because you're my sister, I am expected to, we have to get along. And it's like, actually, no.
Yeah.
Especially when you've spent a lot of time away and there's so many, and all these experiences that we go through inform who we are.
Especially with you two living in a completely different culture and country for so many years. You come back to a family that's not had their brain completely changed neurally because of those experiences.
Yeah.
But it also means that I think we must empower ourselves and remind ourselves that we're empowered to be in this place where we can actually love someone but not share their beliefs.
Yeah.
You can pick your battles. You know, it's okay to go to a Christmas catch-up, some kind of festive get-together, and that person be there and not engage in the conversation that's going to trigger you.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's okay. You can separate yourself from it. You can change the topic.
Yeah.
What do we tell our kids about difficult people? Is there a conversation that we should have as parents with our children?
I think the conversation you would have with kids is different to what I would have with Bennett just because of ages. So we have to think of language that's appropriate.
Yep.
But I think, and perhaps the conversation that you would have with Lotus and River might be different to what you would have with Bodhi because Bodhi's still at school, right?
Yeah.
So there's still that forced social situation, which I think is sometimes one of the most difficult things about school.
Yeah.
Have 200 people that you must spend the next 12 years with.
Yes.
Like, very difficult.
Yes.
We all go through it.
Yes,
That's a shared experience.
And we all harbour many wounds. So I think if we're talking to little kids, I always start from a place of everyone's different and that's okay. And sometimes people won't always share the same values as us. What's important to other people won't necessarily be what's important to us. So we start off with, in our family, these are the things that are important. So that it helps to ground him with, okay, I'm surrounded, I'm protected here, and this is why we do things a certain way. Now, if you're talking to, say, Bodhi, and you're talking about this forced socialisation, and there's all the complexity of adolescence thrown on top of that, you need to start having more advanced conversations about how people respond differently when they're triggered, and people respond very differently when they're faced with comparison that's toxic, and when they're faced with the situation where there's different SES, and so someone's got this and this person doesn't have this, and there's all this competition that forces them to look at themselves and go, am I okay? Am I enough? Because I think that question starts much younger, but I think it's solidified in adolescence where we really start believing I'm actually not enough.
Yeah, comparison is an awful thing, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
What's SES?
Socioeconomic status.
Well, okay, and then you're into comparison.
Yeah.
I do like the simplicity of what you started with how you would speak with Bennett. I think that would absolutely work in a moment with an adult as well.
But
a young
I think
adult.
it also, once you have children of your ages, then you're in a position where you don't control your kids. You don't control their lives.
Yeah,
you don't control what they believe.
No, the phone does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, TikTok.
That's another episode. But
Jeez.
so what you're doing is you're also opening up the floor to allow them to have their beliefs.
Yes.
I think one of the things that can really damage parental child relationships when those children get older is when parents become so narrow in their beliefs that there is no space for the child to be their own person.
Yes. Well, we've seen that a lot with our son River, and as you know, he's gay.
Yeah.
And the things that upset, or actually the things that don't upset him, what people say that like enrage me. And it just amazed me. And I look at his non-reaction response to it, and he's like, yeah, it's fine. It's what, I just go, really? Because I am so offended by that person.
The lioness mama comes out.
It's so interesting. Yeah, but like it doesn't do him. I think maybe it's good that he can see that he knows how much I care, but, I don't need for him to be reactive like me to make it all okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Rick doesn't dwell.
No.
He doesn't sit with stuff. He doesn't dwell. He just moves on. He's like a river. He doesn't sit and stagnate. He's like, no, none of that. I'll just move on.
Yeah, but what you've created around him is this cushion of resilience. He's accepted. And when you are raised in a family system that leads with acceptance, then non-acceptance from anywhere that's happening outside of that is far easier to withstand.
Yeah.
Because where it counts, where you're loved unconditionally, is safe and enduring.
Oh, I want to call him right now. That's so beautiful because that's exactly how, he's been accepted. Yeah, and it's it's a bit of an emotional moment for Papa over here.
Papa Daddo.
Oh, yeah. Papa, I think that's true about him. Oh, that's beautiful. It seems to me a great antidote for all of this stuff is simple curiosity and having curiosity with the prickly or difficult person.
Yeah.
Is that something that we can do? I'm kind of looking for 3 succinct tools.
I'm going to give you 2.
Okay, give me 2 because curiosity is 1. Be curious with these people.
See how she just did that boundary right there?
I did.
I love that.
3's too much.
Did you put a fence up?
2 was very gentle. I just shut the gate.
Okay.
The compassionate curiosity, both with ourselves and with the difficult person. Because I think where our power starts is, why am I reacting like this? How am I letting my boundaries be crossed, and where can I reinforce those boundaries? And the second thing is, I would really love listeners to think about this as they're managing themselves over this particular season. And that's that what you say yes to today, please make sure it's in the service of your future self. So make sure that you've got the personal resources and the energy available. If you're being asked to attend an event in 4 weeks' time, do you want to go to that event? Or are you saying yes because in the moment, right here and now, it's easier to say yes? Please make a decision for your future self, because they'll thank you for it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Pete.
And because we're a relationship podcast, I love what you said about being a team. If you're in relationship, that you can team up, so when you're going into those situations that might be difficult for one or the other, you feel like you've got someone with you.
Absolutely.
A safe space.
Triangulate the shit out.
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily need to be an intimate relationship either.
Yes.
I sometimes team up with my brother or debrief with my brother.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who the relationship is with.
Yep.
You've just got to make sure that person is psychologically safe for you.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. Having that download person is everything that you can relate with. Beautiful.
Thanks, Beck.
Oh, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so lovely to see you. I wish that your beautiful wife Nissa and Bennett were with you, because you're a beautiful team. Speaking of teams,
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
We'll have you back in on the next book. I'm sure there's more to come.
No pressure.
Such good info.
And as you say, delivered with so much kindness and heart. She's just such a warm human being.
Yeah.
She's so highly trained and highly intelligent, but she really leads with her heart first. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, and there's a strength behind it as well.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm saying, listener, is I will be listening back to this several times and taking notes, because I didn't take any notes. I was just really into what Beck had to say.
Yeah, and go buy a book, Difficult People. She writes in a way that, again, she writes from the heart. So it's not like a lot of techno medical talk. She writes really clearly, really succinctly, and it's like your best friend just downloading you about difficult people and how to get through. So she's fantastic for that.
And also easy ideas to integrate, so you can put the info into action straight away and get going and
Exactly.
have a great Christmas and or great festive season.
That's right.
Holiday season.
That's right. Yeah, and maybe you give the book to the difficult person in your life. Hint, hint.
You need this. Maybe not.
All right. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.